that. And I think that's something we have to get better at. It's not about, and I use teaching a lot because I spend a lot of time there, but as parents, whatever, it's not about what you know. We should know these things. It's about how you create environments where kids can learn. And I think that's the uniqueness of an amazing teacher, is that they're not program or curriculum driven and saying, teacher or students, you should learn because I've taught you. It's more about the idea, are you learning? And as I'm teaching, if what I see is that you're not learning, I'm going to change the environment very quickly, and so that you do learn. So I'm a big believer in this idea in mentoring relationships. You should be continually assessing to learn. Are kids picking up what we're trying to invite them into? Because what we do in our society is we tend to use testing as a way to figure out whether we've done a good job with kids or not. And we shouldn't be testing not knowing they actually have learned what we've actually taught them. Because testing then says, you got a D minus, so you're not doing very well in my class. What I'm really saying is that as a teacher, you didn't figure out that this kid was not getting the way you were teaching, and you should have stepped back. Same with mentoring, same with parenting. We need ways to sort of be curious and figure out, what is it that this kid is doing? Am I really making a good connection? I have times asked these questions. Am I treating you with respect today? Are we connecting on things that you're learning and you see as meaningful and purposeful? And are we moving towards the goals that you actually consider important? And I'm not asking that to get a pat on the shoulder. I'm asking that to assess whether I'm on track in the relationship. Because if it's not, it's my job to change, not the person's. And that's the same thing in mentoring. I think that mentors need to learn the art of always assessing, am I on track with you? The mentor-mentee relationship is valued and respected, and that goes both ways. I have a colleague of mine who's a principal in a fairly high-needs school in Calgary, 80% ESL, 16 different cultures. 4 years ago, that school was the bottom 10th of Calgary school system on health, behaviors, academics. But what he did is he came in and he said to the students, we've got two things going on in our school. One is our expectations of you, but the second and more important one is your expectations of us as teachers. And what he did is he said, I expect you to do the best you can with what you have. And if you don't have it, it's my job as a teacher in a school culture to make sure you've got it in order to be successful. So I think it's a unique environment he's created where there's these two expectations of what teachers expect of students, but also what students expect of teachers, and it's a relationship. And it's really neat how some of the more challenging students, instead of acting out their behaviors, they've now been given conduits to sort of say, you know something, this isn't fitting for me. I need to do something different. And they can actually advocate to the teachers, who then can create a different option or get support from their colleagues on what it might need. He's moved that school up into the top 10. He even has families now coming into the school saying, you know, you've done something with our kids where they feel like they're confident and they can actually get resources and actually move forward in successful ways. We've got a situation happening in our family. Dawn, could you help us with this? The kids are actually teaching the family and the parents this model of what it means to have a collaborative relationship, and they're coming to the school now saying, could you help us as a family? And I think that's neat how that culture of relationship has moved from teacher to student right into the family. And so it's one of those situations where he's now got it down and he knows how to do that. Matter of fact, you know, when he hires teachers, that's the standard he puts out there. He says, listen, you've spent 4 or 5 years at school. You know how to do math. You know how to do science. I want to know whether you know how to do relationship. And if you don't know how to do relationship, this may not be a good school for you, because I'm going to have expectations of you. And I'm going to mentor you the same way I expect you to mentor the kids in the classroom. And so he's inviting teachers into a journey, not just a profession. And when I interview the teachers, they talk a lot about this idea of I'm changing. I'm having relationship with kids, and I'm working hard. They don't talk about how my kids are doing in math. They talk about relationship. They talk about feelings. They talk about their own processes. And that's where we need to go. Strength-based mentors in themselves see themselves as a coach, and they see the mentee or the person as the star player in their own story. And I mean a coach in a thing, but I'm talking about coaching, and the idea is that mentoring, in my mind, is a facilitating process. It's not a dictating process. It's not a prescribing process. There are times when you have to give kids information or set expectations. But what Michael will be talking a lot about this afternoon, and I think it's just a unique concept, is that it's okay to have goals, but if you don't have relationship goals, you'll struggle with. And if you just have relationship and you don't have goals, you're still going to struggle. It's that combination of bringing it together. So a really neat concept that we need to pay attention to. Consistencies, trust, respect, compassion, patience. These are the characteristics that we need to bring to it, not demands, expectations, setting limits, consequences. I've always been really a bit of a stickler for consequences because I don't really, I think when you have relationship with people, there's sort of built-in natural consequences because kids figure it out when they've done something and they've created a sense of disappointment. That's a more powerful concept than saying, you know, you can't have this privilege for the next 10 days. I've never figured out why people use timeout. I think it's the most ridiculous concept in the world. You know, because what do you think the kids are doing when you time them out? They're spending the next 15, 20 minutes or whatever time you give them to make your life hell because you've hurt them. And they're going to get back at you. As opposed to, you've done something. That was an interesting choice. But it's just shown me that you want me to spend the next 6 hours with you. It's about getting into their lives. Whatever the interaction is, it should never damage the relationship. It should always reinforce to that kid that you're willing to spend time with them and go the distance with them. And what I find in a lot of programs when we use this reverse timeout concept is that the kids eventually start figuring out, wait a minute, I'm not going to do that because that means you're going to spend a lot of time with me and interfere with what I want to do in life. And it gets funny. It starts to create an interaction where they're laughing at each other. And it's this idea of letting kids know, look, you as a person, I think you're amazing, I'm absolutely crazy about you, and I'm going to support you. I don't always agree with what you do, but you as a person. So you're separating the behavior from who the person is and giving them permission. I think we were just talking a little bit here, and I think Mike put up a really neat concept. When we interview or talk about kids, do we say, you know, this person is so-and-so, this is his name, this is his family, or we say, this is the kid that did this, and then we talk about his name? I thought that was really an interesting point, is that we do tend to describe people by sometimes the situations they're in, as opposed to who they truly are as our starting point on how we talk about them. So the art of building trust. These are just kind of concepts that a strength-based person would embrace. I use these strategies all the time because they're ways to respect the relationship, but yet invite kids to embrace different experiences, different ways of doing things. But I always look to turning problems into learning opportunities, not as failure, not as you're disappointing me. So I think many kids respond much more effectively when you're saying, hey, could we do this differently, as opposed to scolding. Provide fail-safe relationships. No matter what a kids do, that's never going to mean I'm going to give up on them. And I almost bring that concept from my parenting. My 2 boys will always be my sons, irrespective of what they do. They are my sons. That's not changing. Same thing in mentoring. We have to say to people, I'm going to accept you no matter what. And they need to hear that and understand that. And that's why with my 2 boys, I don't talk to them about being successful in life. Because I think success in our society is a bit skewed on some of the criteria that we use. You think they need to get a good education, a great paying job, you know, all those kind of things. And yet some of the more amazing people in life are the ones who are choosing opposite patterns. I asked, when I talk to my 2 boys, I talk to them in terms of what was it like to be a Hammond today? Those are characteristics of how you think, how you work with people, how you interact, how you respond to things. Because what I'm looking for are those building blocks that are going to take them forward and be successful, no matter what they are, whether they are a janitor in a school, a CEO of a company, a humanitarian worker working in a third world country. I want them to have those building blocks, and we'll talk about those. Increased dosages of nurturance. I'm a big believer in, 3 compliments before you even talk about change in something. Always emphasize things that you recognize in them, you value, because that creates a context for people to feel safe about maybe how they might need to do things differently. Don't crowd. That's that idea of, we have a tendency, I think, when we see risk or behaviors that we don't see as functional. There's a natural tendency in us to get in there and want to create safety, change it. And it's almost like it's unethical to think in terms of when risk is occurring that you would talk about as something positive or strength. It seems to go contrary to our nature. And my belief is that if, for some kids, by going in and crowding, you damage the relationship because they don't know how to handle you that close. And they will start pushing you back, and they'll start throwing hand grenades at you. I call it hand grenades. You know, that's the swearing, the one-finger salute.